All right. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on time. We are so excited for this session. But we're going to get everyone just a minute or two to settle in, settle down, grab some water, coffee, tea before we jump in. So as some of you might know, today is our second session. Yesterday we had part one and today is part two. So I am curious if any of you were with us yesterday, same time here when we were talking about, all about data, and we have incredible speaker, Mina Des. If you were here with us, let us know in the chat. And yes, thanks so much, Dora. How can I get the replay from yesterday? Fantastic question. Replay is ready, and actually, our colleague Sarah will be putting a link in the chat. And if the email with additional resources and a replay wasn't sent yet, just give it a day or two, and it will be going your way with the survey that was always generously shared with us. And yeah, link is in the chat, so feel free to access the replay through it. But Alicia was here. Wonderful. Good morning. Welcome back. Dora, also welcome back. If anyone else wants to say hello, we always welcome engagement. So please feel free to do so. But we are on time, so let's get going. Once again, welcome back to our July Speed Learning Series. I'm Yulia Zhernovaya, and I'm Head of Strategy and Growth at Giveffect. Giveffect is 10-in-1 nonprofit software platform with all the tools to create and manage relationships with your donors, volunteers, create and manage events, track brands, and email marketing, and so much more, all in one place to streamline operations, streamline fundraising, and empower your team to spend more time on your mission. And today I am so excited to be joined by Hannah Fox, our client success manager, and Hannah brings so much expertise in creating effective workflows, but also automation to make data actionable and meaningful for all the Giveffect clients. And today, together, we are going to be diving into part two, which is workflows that works. Turning your data into actionable result before year end. All right, but before we jump in, I can see in the chat again, some of you were here yesterday, and if you didn't, again, please feel free to catch the replay. But I did want to share a couple of takeaways. The session was very dynamic, very packed with actionable tips. For me personally, the three main takeaways were: one is to prioritize intentional data listening, not just data collection. So Mina, our speaker, shared this mindset shift from merely collecting data to actively listening to your community. And before your year-end campaign starts, there's still time. So take the time to understand motivation, values, experiences of your donors and volunteers. That can be done through thoughtfully designed surveys, feedback loops, or even adding additional questions on any of your forums on the website. The second takeaway is to incorporate motivational and action-oriented questions in your, again, surveys, or it can be just your donation form. Mina shared a lot of different questions, but two questions that stood out was: what motivated you to engage with our organization? And you can provide a list of different options for them to choose from. Or the second question is open-ended: what does generosity mean to you? So again, those type of questions are yield richer insights and directly inform segmentation or personalization strategy to engage with each and every donor. And last, I think this one also so important, is clearly communicate why are you asking for specific type of demographic data to build trust. So right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of sensitive information, demographic information, and so on. So the advice was not just ask for some pieces of data, but explicitly state the purpose of question and how you'll use their answer. So for instance, if requesting pronoun or demographic details, you can specify practical application of such information, such as we're going to use it to better communicate, to use it to, in emails, letters, or maybe when event happen to use it on the name tags and so on. But again, there's so much more information. I really encourage everyone to dive deep and go back and watch the recording. But we are going to be jumping into today's topic again and talking all about automation and workflows, right? So without further ado, Hannah, my first question again, because we were talking about data yesterday, can you share maybe a few examples of how Giveffect supports data collection or data listening, and what are some of the tools that everyone can start using? And for our audience, I do want to preface that we today have, I would say, probably 50% of our audience are Giveffect clients and about 50% are non-Giveffect clients. So if you're a Giveffect clients, follow along, tag along. You can follow all the things that Hannah will be sharing. You can implement it right away. If you're non-Giveffect clients, don't worry about it. There is still so many different concepts and information that we'll be sharing, and you can utilize it with your own tools, and just it's gonna look different, but you can follow the same logic and implement it in what you use. Or if you ever want to take a look at Giveffect, just contact me and I'll be happy to connect. But Hannah, what is your advice to everyone on what automation can be utilized now to streamline some of the data collection?
Yeah, awesome. First off, I'm so excited to hear that so many people are back from yesterday. So welcome back. Yulia, you gave such a great recap of what Mina shared yesterday. I think we heard so much about the best practices around data collection and data listening, what questions we really should be asking our supporters to better understand their motivations. So today I'm going to dive into ideas to make that data collection really easy. I think the truth is that if data collection feels really manual or is taking a lot of time, time consuming, it's not going to happen consistently. So I want to talk about automation, and that's really where the power of automation comes in, because it's making sure that all those questions are happening on every donation form, every volunteer application, every event sign up. All of these forms are quietly gathering the insights that you need without adding extra work to your plate. So I'm going to bring this to life, and I'm going to show you some real world examples of how nonprofits are already doing this. Again, like Yulia mentioned, this is going to be specific to within Giveffect, but plenty of tactical ideas that you can take away and run with it on your own too. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to take a look here at a donation form. There's so many great things happening with this donation form. We have the impact statements, but as I scroll down, I have these additional questions. And so you can add custom questions to any of your donation forms. Again, in this case, it is a donation form, but you can add it to volunteer forms, or if you're buying an event ticket. And you're able to just really quickly and seamlessly collect this information without it having to be that extra survey or additional link. Just right within the checkout process, we're gathering information. Of course, the example that I have here is really specific to this organization, but you can still see that it's really clear why they're gathering this information. Mina made a strong point yesterday that we should be informing supporters why we're asking for this. And so it's really clearly listed. They want to grab this info so that they are updating their alumni on events. And what's awesome about this is that this data collection is, again, happening in the background. It's happening at the same time that they're also collecting that donation. So this is just a really quick and easy way to automate. And I'll show you a couple of additional examples here in just a moment. So not only can we grab info from our forms, but we also do have the ability to send out automated surveys. So this is a more standalone survey. You know, it has its own link, but I think the automation piece that's so key is this survey is happening and it's being sent to supporters as soon as they complete their volunteer shift. So they've checked in, you know, maybe a day later, or you can set a send delay if you'd like. Maybe you want it to happen right after. Volunteers are going to get this survey. And that data collection, again, is just happening really consistent because I'm not having to think about, oh, who volunteered yesterday? Who do I have to go and send this survey to? It's happening automatically. And two, I really want to emphasize that, you know, I think sometimes when we hear the word automation, it feels impersonal. And I just want to clarify here too that any of these automated actions can feel really personalized. You know, we have replacement variables, and a lot of times your supporters are not even going to know that it's an automated survey because they're getting an email that says, "Hi," has their first name in it. It says, "Thank you for completing your shift yesterday, doing this job." So it's like really looks like, you know, it came from a human. And then it's saying, "Please fill out this survey." And we're just collecting that data. And it's really quick and automated. Um, More than that, you know, we can build out really complex surveys. But I think automating that data is really your first step. It's getting clean data, it's happening in the background, so it's saving time. And then taking it a step further, how are we going to turn those insights into actions? I think that's where our workflow automation comes into play. So once that data comes in, then what happens next? What are you doing with the data? How are you following up? How are you simplifying those next steps?
Yeah, I think that's great. And we'll jump there in a second. One thing I wanted to add, I can hear a question coming from one of our clients or some nonprofit folks that I talk to, and they're like, well, we want to make our donation form short. It's like, what if people don't want to answer some of those questions, right? And I think it's a valid question to some degree, but having an option of making them mandatory versus making them optional can be something that can really help to, you know, whoever wants to reply, they can reply. But I think a lot of time we're talking like shorter, faster, like we want to get to destination in the quickest possible way, but at the same time collect the most information, and it's not always possible. So I always advocate one question, two questions, not gonna, you know, if I want to donate to the organization, not gonna scare me away, especially if the question is optional. But we might jump to it later too, but with survey, Hannah, correct me, it's not only about surveys for volunteering, the same can be done for the events, right? Like automated surveys after events or community gathering, you name it.
Of course, of course. Yeah, volunteers. This survey that I showed was really just an example, but absolutely, you know, the surveys that the questions that Mina was talking about yesterday, all of that follow up or sending that survey out can be automated.
Absolutely. And Dora, I see your comment. I vote for optional. I'm with you. I'm vote for having a question, but also having it optional, right? So if you can collect it, you can. But thank you so much. We love that comment. But Hannah, you did mention workflows. So let's dive into our next topic. So workflows that work. And I like when you say workflow automation, because in our DNA, I feel like in the current state, we see the word workflow everywhere. And it can mean so many different things to different people. Like we call it internal workflows, other people call it drip campaign, they can call it automation, and so on. So just for the purposes of this session, I want to make sure we kind of define workflows for our audience. And again, for this session and for this context, we are going to be talking about workflow automation, which is a series of steps or tasks that you can set up for the software to take. So again, there can be communication workflow automation. So similar, you can call them drips, right? It's a series of emails that someone can receive once they donate for the first time or volunteer for the first time. It can be administrative workflows, right? As if donation over a certain amount came and you want to segment it and tag that person with a specific tag or group. It can be also supporting your fundraising and development efforts and notifying your CEO to give this donor a call and so on. So there's a lot of different scenarios. I know that, and we're probably not going to go through every single one of them. But I want to pass it to you again and kind of like dive deep into the action and how those workflows can look for someone.
Yeah, certainly. And I love that you start out by kind of defining what workflows mean to us. I'm gonna do a little bit of my own vocab here, and just you'll hear me throw out a lot of words. So I want to kind of before I get into what a workflow looks like and what those practical takeaways are, I do want to kind of show you or explain what I mean by some of these vocabulary words. They might look a little different if you're not using Giveffect, but it's either way, all the same. So I have so many examples I want to show, and with just limited time, I'm just going to show you a couple today. But I am gonna get started with that background. So I'll share my screen again. When the way that I want everyone to think about it is it's almost a if this, then this rule. So when X happens, A, B, C, and D happens automatically. So that series of actions, the ABC of what's happening, is going to be what I'm going to refer to today as the workflow. So to put a visual to it, you have so many different actions that can happen. But there is something that has to kind of kick off or get those actions to occur. And so you're going to hear me refer to that action today as a trigger. So there's a couple different parts to your workflows. Your workflow is going to be the actions that happen. The trigger is what is getting those actions to start. And then the journey is looking at the full picture of seeing this happened and then these actions happened after that, just looking at the big picture here. So with our workflow automation, you really are able to just simply drag and drop to build out these series of actions that you want to happen. Maybe I want to send an email and add someone to a group when something happens. So I'm going to talk through some real examples today, and just for some really easy places to start. So first, a couple of triggers that are really low-hanging fruit and really easy. I think when we talk about workflow automation, it can feel very daunting, but it really doesn't have to be complicated. So it can be something as simple as I want to send a happy birthday email to my contacts in my CRM that have a birthday. So the trigger here, of course, is just when that birthday occurs. And then I'm associating it to the workflow where I built out my actions here. Maybe I'm sending them an email, and then I also want to send them a text message. So this is just a really quick way to be able to another personal touch point that's happening in the background that you don't have to think about, but it's just running seamlessly for you. And you can, of course, add some conditions to make this really specific. So, I have some teams who they have a different workflow that they're wanting to send a different message to their board members for their birthday. So you can add things like contact group is board member. And then, of course, this birthday message is only going to go to contacts who are a part of this board member group. So this is a really a great one that I always suggest all teams to start out with. If you're not sure where to start, go with birthdays. It's really quick and really easy to set up.
And
Another one,
Hannah, it does, sorry to interrupt, it
no,
doesn't always have to be even the email, right? Like I think some teams utilize SMS as well as a communication tool.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, really, it could even be more admin focused too. So I've seen some teams who love to write handwritten birthday cards. And so maybe it's creating a task. I want to assign a task to myself. And every time someone's birthday rolls around, I get a notification that says, it's
No,
Yulia's
that's
birthday.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
really quick
Yeah,
way.
that's nice.
Another easy one is your anniversaries. So we have two different anniversaries, donorversary and volunteer-versary. I think that these two, donor here or volunteer-versary, both of these are just really like nice ways to get people re-engaged. So if they've donated a year ago, whether they've continued to donate or not, this might be another reminder to be like, hey, it's your donorversary, and then ask for something else. Like, would you consider giving again or giving monthly, things like that. Or it's also a really nice way to share impact. So saying, your volunteer anniversary, you've been volunteering with us for X amount of years. This is your total number of hours. Again, we have those replacement variables within the email template that's going to them. So you can say, this is how many hours you've volunteered, and like, this is really the impact that you've made. So I think there's a lot of different things that you can do with those anniversaries as well. Awesome.
Anything for development or for like
Yeah.
major gift? We're
Yes.
close.
So
Okay.
these might, those were my simple, easy to get started. These are still simple, don't get me wrong. Just maybe a little bit,
Mm.
thinking a little bit more complex. Our new donor email series. So I think for retention, so important. We hear so often someone gives once and then either no one's following up with them and so they're not giving again, or this is just your chance to really tell the story and the impact of what that gift made and hopefully inspire them to give another time. So a great workflow that I always recommend setting up is the new donor email series. And again, this can look so many different ways. The example that I have here is sending them an email, and you'll see that I have a send delay set 10 days after that first gift. So, the action, the trigger, we'll get to that in just a moment, the specifics of it. But really what that looks like is someone donates for the first time and they're going to get an email 10 days after. Now, of course, they'll get a quick email right when they donate saying thank you, but this is to continue to cultivate and maybe show them other ways to engage with the organization. So, for example, 10 days later, I want to say, here are our volunteer opportunities. So, thank you so much for giving. Are there other ways that we want to engage you with the organization? Or even, considering monthly giving, or here's how you can get involved with our programs. There's just so many ways to start to cultivate that relationship with the new donors. And then I'll send them a second email, and maybe I'm setting this one to be 30 days later. And you can see here that I've added some branches, so unread and opened. You can, again, get really specific and branch off. If the person doesn't read or open the email, you're able to then create a task. And so maybe then I'm saying, follow up with this new donor because they're not opening our emails. And so maybe give them a personal phone call and see if they want to hear about the programs over the phone, or if this is a great email for them, or what communication preferences they prefer, since they're not opening emails. So here's a great place to start. And you can always too consider some of these other administrative, if you're also someone who's not checking your tasks or your emails, maybe you prefer to just get a notification SMS. You're getting a text that says someone new donated, and check in and just see how you can follow up with that person. So as I mentioned, really the trigger or the action that's starting that workflow off is donation is made. And that first donation date is within the time period of today. So I'm adding a filter to say, this is the very first time they've given is today. And then because of that, this series of actions is going to occur. And there's so many different ways to set this up. We can also consider lifetime overall gift count is 0. So if you're not within Giveffect and your system has something similar to this, you might look at some filters that sound more like this. And then lastly, I heard you say major donors, and that major donor moves management. Absolutely. I've heard that research indicates that a meaningful number of major donors start by giving actually a lower denomination. So they might start by making a gift of just $250. But that initial gift can really be the pathway toward higher donations. So, I think it's hard for donations coming in through a CRM, and for, the development team to be able to monitor all of those donations coming through and think in a strategic way about donor moves management at the same time. So I think workflow automation provides a really nice way to eliminate some of those manual tasks that come with donor moves management, just like the identification. So,
Yeah.
while
And
the 200, oh, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. No.
While
Sorry,
a
go ahead.
$250 donation might not be a major gift on its own, it can really open the door to cultivation. So, that identification happens, and then cultivation and building a deeper relationship with them is really what's going to lead them to give those major gifts, or, open up the opportunity for engagement to be a sponsorship, or some of those higher tier opportunities. So we can take a look at some ideas here. The trigger, as I mentioned, here I'm just setting up amount is greater than or equal to $250. And that is when a donation is made and when that amount is greater than or equal to $250. Yeah, I've also seen some people who will do, is less than or equal to 100, but then we also want to say, or maybe I'll say 250 in this case, but then is greater than or equal to 200. So it kind of gives you some leeway for those 200 to 250 gifts, just giving you a range, but lots of options with the trigger. As far as the actual workflow that's happening, you can, again, customize this to your needs and your internal processes. What do you typically, that's part of this workflow creation process, is thinking through, like, what manual tasks do I have every day, and how can I help have this tool really help alleviate those manual tasks? So maybe I want to get a quick notification text. Again, I want to say contact my contact name here, gave $200 to $250 gift. And then I'm also going to create a task for myself. So I want to say, call this new major donor prospect. So that's that big part of cultivation. You're wanting to set a task and make sure that that awareness that a gift came through is happening.
I
And then,
love that. Sorry, and so many times I actually do receive this question, and everyone's setup is different. But a lot of time, like for example, chief development officer or executive director want to have a personalized, like give personalized thank you to specific types of donors, right? So this really can help to remove the barrier of me first receiving it and then putting it on someone else's template. Now, if the bigger gifts come through, it can go directly to the person and I can create that whole kind of workflow, right? So it can eliminate time, but also improve collaboration and also eliminate just missing opportunities because typically when it's manual, it's really hard to just not see something or I love
yeah,
that.
that's such a good point, and such a good point about just the team collaboration aspect. Really having the ability to just auto assign those tasks and it all being in the same place and being able to see who's completed this task and there's no overlap of like I don't know who called that donor. Things like that just get alleviated when it is happening automatically, and then also like all in one place to be able to see it. I think there's also some nice internal fields, so on the back end, you're also able to map or add these contacts to groups. And this can be helpful for so many reasons, for reporting or also for segmenting your communications. So, within Giveffect specifically, if I want to add this person to a donation or sorry, a contact group, maybe I have a contact group that is my VIP contacts. These are people who I'm really trying to cultivate along the major donor pipeline. And they're getting different emails than everyone else. And so it's really nice to be able to just add them to that group automatically. And then within Giveffect, you can send that email right to that one group. Or you can also map fields specific to the donation. So I can also, take a look at some of these more niche accounting GL codes, things like that. But you can really start to map the data on the back end too, which is always helpful. So I know that was a ton of information, but definitely a good place to start. And I wish I could go through every scenario here today.
No, thank you so much for walking us through it. Without going into too much detailed demonstration, I'm also curious in the context of year-end giving and preparation, if you have like any, just maybe a few workflows or advices that teams can consider setting up as they're preparing for that big season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with year end, it's always important to think about your lapsed donor re-engagement.
Mhm.
So you're
Mhm.
thinking about as those donorversaries roll around, who hasn't given since their last donor anniversary. Maybe
Mhm.
it's kind of a form of that Libent and Cybent last year, but unfortunately not this year report.
Mhm.
So you're saying like who's given last year, but not yet this year.
Right.
I think also, as we talk about that year-end giving season, it's also a really busy time for volunteers. And so, volunteer engagement and trying to send more opportunities to volunteers, or like I said,
Mhm.
thinking about like how you're going to recognize your volunteers so you can tier off, maybe someone donated 10 hours or 20 hours and
Mhm.
you're going to host a end of year brunch for them to really like showcase your appreciation for all of their volunteer hours throughout the year. And that tier can be automated, and then also all those communications too. And then, of course,
Awesome.
I could never miss events, as the year end rolls around. Events are so popular, and so maybe if someone buys an event ticket, we're thinking about how are we mapping that on the back end so that when next year's
Mm,
event rolls around, we know who attended this year. So that data mapping, you're just adding people to groups for your future self.
mm.
Or, of course, sending them communications that way too.
Awesome. And then if we're not talking about the workflows, but more so like a general automation concept, like again, maybe like top three things teams
Yeah.
can set up now. So because again, the giving season is around the corner, and to avoid overwork and burnout, like what is a few automations that can be easily set to
Yes.
help everyone?
Yeah, great point. Definitely your automated thank yous and automated tax receipts. So I think something that's nice when we're thinking about year end specifically is you can really easily customize those thank you emails, whether that's specific to your year end campaigns. So they're getting different messaging than if they gave in January. As we approach this year-end giving season, they're getting year-end thank yous. Or you could also, switch up the language, whether and kind of automate it based on the amount that they gave too. So just segmenting that further. But that would definitely be my number one is your thank yous and your tax receipts. Within Giveffect, it's super simple and easy to set those things up. And then two, I would say your communication preferences and your mailing list segmentation. So, something I hear often is kind of that idea of oversaturation with so many messages going out in the year end. So it's so important that you have communication preferences for your supporters. So a quick way to automate that is on all of your donation forms, volunteer forms, all the forms, just having, check boxes to say, do what communications do you want to hear about from us? My volunteer news, the newsletter, and just giving people that chance to opt in for the mailing lists that they really want to be a part of. And then
Amazing.
yeah,
Go ahead. The
last
last
one
one.
is contact management and group segmentation. So I talked about this, not too long ago, but just the importance of really having your contacts in groups, whether that's for reporting or for communications. There's so many ways to data map on the back end so that when someone completes this form, they're auto tagged in a contact group. And then your future self is kind of able to have that clean data and know where that contact came from and what to do with them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. It was absolutely amazing. But we're now going to switch the gears. We have a few questions from a live audience. And if you still want to add another questions, please feel free to do so. But we're going to go ahead and start with a question from Paige. Is there a way to trigger a new workflow for a group of people who already exist in Giveffect versus waiting for them to be triggered by future volunteer event or donation? I think you partially responded on it with like I guess it depends, right? With some of volunteer anniversary, donor anniversary, there is a way, but if you want to add any additional content.
Yeah, great question, Paige. Yeah, you totally hit it, Yulia. There are going to be a few that are happening in the background. So birthdays or those anniversaries, or other ways that they're kind of participating with your organization. I see here you have events are listed. So there are definitely some. And then there's also the opportunity, and Paige, I know we can talk about this too a little bit more offline, but there is the ability to manually enroll people into the workflow automations. So not only, does it have to be this online action that occurs, but you could also say, this group of people, I want to start them on this email drip series, and you can kind of more manually enroll them into a workflow as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hannah. And then Jordan asking is, with benefit hugely is a touch point to our volunteers. It's in demo mode. Can we jump on it too? I think it was referring to the survey that we had in demo mode. So I guess the question is if they can utilize it. And if I didn't misunderstood, please correct me in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. So you can absolutely and we can share some of these question ideas in our follow-up. But certainly you can utilize the questions that we showed on screen. You just would have to create it in your own account and set up that automation so it's going to your volunteers.
Yeah, and then Hannah will be sharing, but next week there is going to be a live workshop for clients. The link will be shared in the chat just in a few moments. And then we can also go and kind of walk you through how to create it next week as well, if that's something you want to do. But it is, if you're talking specifically about the volunteer survey, that it can be created through forms section in Giveffect. Perfect. And then a question from Cindy. We have a referral form that we send to our applicants for financial literacy. Is there a workflow that automatically sends the referral form to a third-party company once they submit? I guess once they submit the application, can it trigger a workflow that will send them a link to this third party?
Yeah, absolutely. So within Giveffect, we do have an applications module, and there are workflow triggers associated with applications submitted. Or, I know with applications, there's often a few stages that you have to move people through. So maybe you've like granted or, awarded someone approval into that program for the application. Once they are moved to a certain stage, or even if they're denied, you can also set that workflow to trigger based off of that action as well. So it would just be a matter of taking that third party link and putting it in the email template of your workflow, and then setting it up so that when application is submitted, they're getting this email automatically. That's a great use case.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thanks so much, Hannah, for walking us through. And I can't believe we're almost on time. Again, for all the Giveffect clients, there is a link in the chat. There is a workshop that is going to be happening next week, and Hannah will share just about it a little bit more in a second. But I wanted to invite everyone to join us also on August 21st for a 45-minute session. It's going to be a speed learning session on year-end campaign. It's going to be a year-end campaign playbook, how one of our clients, Good Samaritan Services, put together a peer-to-peer match campaign. And last year, they raised over $275,000. Absolute success. They're going to walk everyone through kind of step by step, how they came up with the idea of campaign, how they're able to put it all together and achieve results that they did. So link is also in the chat. With love, again, in preparations for Giving Tuesday year-end campaign. It's going to be an amazing session. Super actionable, and would love to see you all. And Hannah, if you want to share just a little bit more about the workshop next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely next week, client workshop. Please bring your questions. This is really meant to be an interactive session. So whether we are brainstorming kind of as a group, seeing what other teams do and how workflow automation is successful for them, or if you just have really specific questions that you want me to answer in the moment, happy to do that too. So please join, and you can jump in and out of the conversation at any time, but super excited to see you all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and walking us through the workflows and other automation. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. What an incredible session. And thank you all. Thank you, Paige, Kate, and everyone who joined us again. And connect with us on LinkedIn. my LinkedIn, and Hannah LinkedIn is also in the chat. So we'd love to stay in touch and also support you in any capacity. And if you ever have any ideas what kind of sessions would benefit you and your organization, also feel free to share with us. We would like to have more of the actionable sessions that everyone can learn from as we go this year and next year. Awesome. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
We'll see you in August. Bye.